Well, come on in. Come on in. Don't be scared. You're in the principal's office, and I'm glad you're here. We're here together for the next 30 minutes to get to the bottom of the issue, and the issue is always education. We will spend this time together with our guests, getting to the heart of the matters that matters most to our community. We will always be honest, and we will always be solution focused. This is where our guests come to explain themselves, the issues that affect us, the issues that affect them. And today, I'm excited because today we're going to be continuing part 2 of a conversation we just started last week. I'm Michelle Pennix, or Principal Pennix to most, and I'm your host for the next few minutes. So join with me as we look at some graphics to remind us about virtual learning and where we were. If you can remember on last week's show, as we come forward to this week, one of the things that we discussed was the timeline of events that have happened around virtual learning. We know that it was in March 16th, to be exact, of 2020, when Jefferson County Public Schools for the first time dismissed students because of COVID-19. Shortly thereafter, in the month of April, virtual learning, or NTI, non-traditional instruction, began with the 5 W's and a how. The who, what, when, where, how were we going to make it? How were teachers going to combine with families to make sure that students still received instruction? And they spent the better part of April and May trying to figure that out, all the way up until the very last day of school. And while it was the last day of school for students, for most educators, it was just the beginning. How to plan for a safe reopening. And the plans were gifted in that direction until we came to mid-July. And in July, our COVID numbers began to soar again, unfortunately. And it was at that point that Jefferson County Public Schools School Superintendent Marty Polio announced that we would be all NTI, non-traditional instruction, 2.0 again. With that, at the same time, President Donald Trump started to demand that schools reopen, only to get pushback from teacher unions, pushback from parents as well. Districts demanded more money to do the job. And so with that came a lot of politicizing the issue of returning to school. Nevertheless, on August the 25th, 2020, school started. And that was only the beginning. When we come back, we'll meet today's guests, who happen to be 2 wonderful young students who will share their perspective about virtual learning and how it affects them and their friends. So don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the principal's office. I'm your host, Michelle Pennix, as we continue to examine virtual learning. For those of you who came back with us this week, you'll remember last week's show, we interviewed 2 parents as they discussed issues regarding virtual learning and their families. Today, we are blessed to have 2 students sharing with us today their experiences with virtual learning, their hopes for virtual learning, and their friends' aspirations as well. I am pleased to have with us on the show today, first, Miss Sarah. Sarah, will you tell us your full name and what grade you're in?
My name is Sarah Danye Robinson, and I'm in 6th grade.
Excellent. And I know you go to a new school this year. What is the name of your new school?
The school I go to is called James Academy.
Grace James Academy. Excellent. All right. So, Davon, if you'll tell us the name, your full name, and what school you go to, as well as grade level.
My name is Davon Jacob Rivers. I'm in 8th grade, and I go to JTMS.
All right. Well, welcome, Sarah, and welcome, Davon. So for the next few minutes, our audience just wants to hear from some kids, because grown-ups talk all the time, and we talk all the time about what we think kids know and what they want to know and how they feel. But it's real important to kids that their voices are heard and that people who look like them also have their voices heard. So it was real important to have kids on the show today. So I'd like to talk with you for a few minutes as kid leaders and leaders of not only yourself but your friends. I'd like for you to answer some questions for me so that we can get a better feel for virtual learning, or NTI. what Jefferson County calls non-traditional instruction. So Sarah, I actually want to start with you, and my first question is, Sarah, are you like scared at all or nervous about learning since you're not in a classroom and since everything's going to be on the computer this year?
I just don't really feel like comfortable because I hasn't really like been, like I hasn't really like did it, like I hasn't really like did work in like a computer. Like I'm never used to it.
So it's taking some time to get used to it. Now, when you were at Maupin, which is where you went before, did you have a computer lab or did you all get on the Chromebooks a lot, maybe to do your defense or anything like that?
We have both. We have Chromebooks and we also have a computer room. It just helps us very much.
Okay, so now though, it's on you to do it, right? So now you've got to do it at home, and so that's kind of a difficult transition, you think? It's kind of hard to start going to doing it all on computer?
Yes.
Which one did you like more, being in person or on the computer at home?
I mean, I feel like being a person because it just feels like doing your work like on the computer. It feels like you have like more work to do on like the computer. But when you're like in person, it doesn't really feel like that much work is getting handed to you.
Okay, so Davon, I'd like your take on this. If you tell us a little bit about, are you at all concerned about learning at home as you were at school? Do you think you're going to miss anything in terms of learning?
Like, in my opinion, I think in-person school is better. Like, I think it's just easier and fun, but, like, I don't hate NTI right now, but I kind of prefer, you know, in-person school.
And can you pinpoint or think about anything that you appreciate more about being in school to learn than you do at home?
Like, I feel like in school, like, there's, like, a motivation, but, like, at home, there's really not, other than just to wake up and, like, you know, do your work.
Well, that was a really good segue into a question I have about waking up. So we know that when we're in person school, you've got to wake up, you got to get dressed, put on clothes, you got to go to the bus or get in the car to go to school, you got to be there on time or you're tardy. How does that work now in your house in the mornings? I mean, do you just, now let me tell you, I've got a student who's in college. And so for her, she sets her alarm and then I'll hear the alarm, so I'll go in there and she's still in bed. She still has on her pajamas. She hasn't got out of bed. She turns on her phone and she goes to class. So how is it for you, Sarah? Do you get up and get dressed and get on the computer and put on your clothes and brush your teeth? Or do you just kind of say, well, it's time to get on the computer to do work?
It's like, I mean, like, I just wake up and like, I don't even know that I'm even doing the work because I just woke up and then my mother would tell me to like, get ready. And so I get ready and then I do my work.
Okay. What about you, Davon? What's it feel like in your house?
I have an alarm on my phone, and like every time I'm about to sleep, I go to sleep at 10. And I put it right next to my ear, so I can actually hear it. And when I do, I'll get up and make sure I'll get up. But my classes start at 8, but I go up at 7, like just to make sure.
Okay, so you wake up an hour early just to make sure you don't miss your class. Okay, that's fair. So let me ask you this. Were you, does it feel like a big difference being at home and getting ready for class than when you were actually going? Does it feel like it's a big difference? Davon, you say yes. What about you, Sarah?
Yeah, it's like very different because like I'm always used to my mother always waking me up and telling me to get ready for me to go to school. But now my mother doesn't wake me up, so I don't even know when my class starts or ends.
But when you're up and she says it's time for class, then you know, right? Okay, so it's a little bit different there. All right, so let me ask you this. Have you all ever seen or been online and your teacher had problems with technology? Like, were you in Google Meet or Zoom or Microsoft and your teacher was like, I'm not sure and somebody had to help her who was also a student. Has that ever happened to you, Sarah?
Yes.
Do you remember what it was?
The teacher didn't really know that she was on mute or not, so she had to ask one of the students if she was on mute.
So do you feel like sometimes when it comes to technology, maybe the students know more than the teachers?
I wouldn't really say that because it's sometimes it's really hard for some students to get online than teachers. So I won't really say that students know more about technology. I'll just say I just don't really know.
Okay. What about you, Davon? Have you had that experience?
Well, like when we started in TI, like we had to go to Google Meets, like the meets like daily, but we like the next week, like we had to go to Microsoft Teams, if that's the name. We had to go to Microsoft Teams, and like it was harder than Google Meets, so my teachers would sometimes have like accidentally mute everyone in the chat, and like sometimes would turn their camera off, but nobody helped them.
Nobody helped the teacher in that? That sounds like school hasn't changed much then. So then let me ask you, do you feel like your teachers so far have done better lessons and trying to get you to learn new stuff more now, or do you feel like they had better lessons when it was in person? Because I've heard mixed messages. What do you think, Sarah? Do you think the learning is better now by the teachers, or do you think it was better back then?
I feel like it would be better back then because when I'm doing my work, it feels like I have all this work on my back and I have to do it. But when I'm in school, it doesn't really feel like I have that much work.
So at home, you kind of think about all the things that you're responsible for doing. And at school, I imagine they kind of stepped you through it, right? Made it seem like it wasn't as overwhelming. What about you, Davon? How do you feel about it?
What was the
Just
question
that
again?
piece about, is it better, the lessons that the teachers have designed, is it better now on technology? Do you think that you see more effort from them, or do you think it was better in person?
I think it was better in person. I felt more effort. I felt more effort in person, but online I feel like we go to Microsoft Teams. They say do this assignment. We do it for 10 minutes. Nobody says anything.
So then you'll answer a question that I talked to your parents about last week. Sarah and Davon both, I talked with them about giving feedback or letter grades. So because you're not in school and none of your friends are actually in school, you know that when you're in school, your teacher can give you an A, B, C, D, U, or O, S, N, I, or U. Do you think you should get those kind of grades now, or do you think they should just tell you about how you're doing and how to help you get better? What would you prefer they do this time, Davon?
Honestly, I don't think grades should even exist. I think it should just be supportive feedback, honestly.
Excellent. What made you come to that conclusion? Why do you think supportive feedback is better than grades?
Because, when I was younger, I used to think grades actually mattered until I got older, that they're just to see you to kind of push you harder instead of giving you good feedback. They're just sort of there to push you harder and make you think that you're going to fail if you don't have them up.
So you learn more when you get feedback. And that's very good that you know that at this age, Davon, because you're right. Constructive criticism or feedback is very important for a growth mindset. And sometimes just letter grades don't do it. But what about you, Sarah? How do you feel about that?
I feel like they should tell you your grades because I feel like we should have grades because when I was in Mockman, I didn't really think that grades really mattered, but now I actually realize now grades a little bit matter because they tell you what your level is. They just don't let you do it on your own. They give you a push.
And that's kind of like what Davon was talking about. So grades for you are important because you like that push. And Davon's saying, I'd rather have the feedback to tell me kind of how I could do better. Maybe there's an equilibrium, and maybe there's an equal ground where you can get kind of both of those things at the same time with NTI. We'll have to wait and see about that. All right, so then here's a question I have. Talk to me about sports or clubs. So Davon, have you participated in these sports or clubs in the past at your school?
Not at my middle school, but I've played basketball. I've played on several basketball teams before and football teams.
Okay.
But what I'm in right now, I'm in like 3 different clubs. That's travel club, forensic science club, and Vex robotics club.
Okay, so those are all at school?
Yeah.
Online?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's interesting. So you actually get to be in 3 different clubs, but it's all through NTI. So do those clubs have different meeting times during the week?
Yeah, like through the first 4 days of the week, we have regular classes. Like the periods are split up into 3. The periods are split up into 3, not just 7 in one day. So there's just 3 periods every day. And on Friday, we go to our clubs instead of like doing regular classes.
Okay, so tell me, because this is a big question, how much do you enjoy, maybe that's the way to say it, do you enjoy having the clubs online?
I mean, I haven't really experienced it.
Okay.
This is like the first time I've, like done, this is my first
Time actually doing the club. You only had it at 1 week. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think you'll like it?
Yeah, in
Excellent.
person.
Excellent. Does that make you even more engaged in school, you think? Even more excited because you do have the club still?
Yeah, probably.
Okay. And Sarah, what about you? Are you in any clubs or do you hope to get involved in any? Not yet. That's one of the hardest things. As you go from middle school or from elementary to middle, joining clubs is one of the things that makes people most nervous. That and opening a locker. But opening a locker you don't have to worry about. But joining a club is a really good way to meet new people and friends. And I am sure that Grace James Academy is going to tell you all about the wonderful clubs you can be involved with so that you meet a lot of new people. All right, so here's the last question I have for you. If virtual learning, if we keep doing NTI the whole school year, how do you think you're going to feel about it in March, when March comes around? What do you think is going to be different, or what would you like to see that's different? Davon, I'm going to start with you.
I'm probably going to get used to it, but it's like I'm going to probably like be more fluent with like the computer and stuff.
Okay.
But like it's still, and my sleep schedule would be fixed.
You think your sleep schedule will be fixed? And that means you'll be getting up on time on your own? Okay. So that's been a big adjustment, I'm sure. All right. And what about you, Sarah? What do you think will be different? What in 6 months? What will March be like for you, you think?
I feel like I will still not be like knowledgeable at it because I used to be so like I used to be so natural of just waking up, going to school, doing my work, going back home, and doing that all over again. But when I'm doing online school and I don't really see a lot of friends and I don't really see people that I know, it's a little bit like confusing.
Mm-hmm. So you think maybe in 6 months you'll be used to it, or you think it'll still be hard?
I won't say that I will be used to it, but I also won't say that I'm not going to be used to it. It just feels so weird just not going to school. I mean, I used to go to school all the time.
Well, Sarah, guess what? You are not alone. And Davon and Sarah both, you all are dealing with what every child in America has to deal with. There are very few that are actually going back to buildings. But I can say this, as long as you remain with an open heart like you've had today as we've talked about these questions, no matter what comes your way. I know you're going to do good. I know you're going to be successful. And when you do go back to school, when that time comes, you're going to be just as prepared and ready as every other kid. All right, you guys, I'm Michelle Pennix and Principal Pennix to most. I have been blessed to have two wonderful guests with me today on the show. It's a conversation that we've continued as we learn about virtual learning and the Black community, how it affects our children. Thank you for being a wonderful guest and participant. Join me right here next week, same time, same place, where we'll continue to examine other issues that affect us in the Black community related to education. I'm Michelle Pennix, and as always, to God be the glory.